Get started.
Well, we
Okay.
have 4 out of the 7 members, so technically we have a quorum.
Great, let's vote to approve.
So I just wanted to thank everybody for volunteering, or some of you maybe had your arms twisted. To be part of the committee, Eric from MRB and Matt, Matt's a Farmington resident, he's online tonight. Part of the MRB team, and I think you're going to probably learn more about the Farmington master plan that's been there and where we want to go in the future to revise it and update it. And just appreciate the time you're going to be spending on this. Don't worry about the costs. That's the town board's problem. Okay? Just, come to consensus on what you think we want in the plan and what we need to go forward. Yeah, it's because I think you hourly, that's why. Yeah, but, yeah, thanks and,
Yeah.
Eric and thanks to Susan for chairing it, appreciate it. And let you guys go. Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor. I haven't had the chance to meet everybody just yet. Do you mind if we do a quick round of going around the room and I guess tell us, Ken, what you use with the parks? How often you use, huh?
And we were,
Yes, who you are, your park usage, and what your motivation is for being on the committee.
Hi, I'm Leah. I live in Farmington. I have for 13, 14 years. We actually live in Auburn Creek or Auburn Meadows, so we've got the Beaver Creek Park, which we use often. I'm a huge walker and runner, so I use the Auburn Trail all the time. I'm looking forward to being a part of a committee and volunteering and being helpful and useful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm Sue. And I live over in Pumpkin Hook on Klein Road. And I think we're mainly trail people and bluebell people. So those are the two, Retenja and the trails we use. Because we don't have kids, so I'm glad there's people on the committee with kids. And same thing, I just want to sort of help my town if I can. And that's why I wanted to be on this committee, so. And I should say, I know Eric and I work in the same industry, so we know each other and a lot of other people in common, so it's great to see you back in New York.
Hi, I'm Tim Ford. I'm the Highway and Park Superintendent for the town of Farmington. Lived here all my life. I've worked for the town of Farmington for 33 years so far. Recently, in the past 3 years, taken over as Highway and Park Superintendent. I was a mechanic for 30 years. I started in 1991 at the ice storm, if anybody remembers that. I'm Steve Holtz. I'm on the town board here in Farmington, but I'm also a lifelong resident and have 3 young kids. So we spend a lot of time time of year at Pumpkin Hook and Retentia for soccer games. The kids are all at Pumpkin Hook Park for rec starting today. And we ride our bikes to Pumpkin Hook Park quite a bit and utilize the Auburn Trail quite a bit as well.
I'm Sarah. I've lived in Farmington about 13 years. I have 3 girls, 2 that live right in town, and we live in Farmbrook. So use those playgrounds a lot and use the Auburn Trail to go to Farmington Grove and the other neighborhoods to visit people, and just want more things around for the kids and keep everything in the town.
Larry Potter, I've lived in the town about 84 years. Always been interested in the town, mainly for the last 50 years, I think. I've been involved with the town and my kids grew up here, my children, my son and daughter, and now I have 3 great grandchildren But we watch one day a week that are involved in games and that's. Want to serve on the committee.
Very nice.
Thank you, Larry. I'm Ron Duran. I've been here now 20-some years. Not as long as highway superintendent over there, but we are bringing things, visions to reality here. And this is one of them. We have a very active community now. It's growing. A lot of demands are placed on town government these days. We have a challenge here to provide a guideline, if you will, over the next 10 years to get us into the future for parks and recreational programs. So I'm going to turn it back to you and I'll tell you more about the charge to the committee here in a few minutes.
That's right where we're moving into. So, just last week, the town board established this committee, as you, I'm sure all know.
Don't forget
Thank you.
everybody on Zoom
Oh, right. Sorry, Matt.
and Julie.
What's that?
Julie LaRue looks like she's attending remotely as well.
It doesn't, can't really see her on there, but.
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Julie. Could you introduce yourself for everybody?
Sure. My name is Julie LaRue. I'm chairperson of the Recreation Advisory Committee. I've been a resident of Farmington for over 20 years.
Thank you, Julie. And ma'am?
I'm Julie Maslin, sorry for my dryness. I live on Town Line Road, that's Farmington.
Real quick, how come, why are you, what's your motivation for being on this committee?
Peter asked me to be.
You were one of the arm twisters.
Well, we appreciate you being here. What about you, Matt?
Yes, everybody. I am Matt Souza. I am wearing a couple different hats on this committee. So I work for MRB Group and I will be working with Eric to complete this plan, but I also am a Farmington resident. So I live in the Beaver Creek subdivision. My backyard actually fronts right on Beaver Creek Park. So we go there all the time. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we're there all the time. I'm also like Leah, a big runner. So I'm on the Auburn Trail just about every weekend doing nice long runs. So I really appreciate that as an asset. And yeah, I'm also volunteer, or I am on the environmental conservation committee for the town. So I am also the liaison to that committee as part of this process. So wearing a lot of different hats, but really excited to work with all of you and work specifically on this plan because as a resident, this one's a little more, literally closer to home. So I'm really excited to work on this process with you guys for the next 5 or 6 months.
Thanks, Matt. So I'll kind of mix in the project background with the resolution itself. The last Parks and Recreation plan was completed in 2017. It even recommends updating it every 5 years. And it's just general good planning practice to update your plans periodically every 5 to 10 years. So that period of time having been gone through and the town taking a number of actions to accomplish what's set out in that plan. The town has set forth the project of updating it to make sure that what's established in there is maybe what the demand for parks and recreation services are in the town is still accurate. And then ultimately what the action steps and kind of strategic plan for the town as it relates to parks and recreation is still accurate. So we're going to take a look at that 2017 plan and revise it to today's conditions based on population need, all that good stuff. In doing so, the town's established a steering committee to guide that process. You can't just hire somebody and they come in and analyze all the information. There's a lot of local knowledge that you have to work with people to obtain. How people actually use their parks. You can't just visit it once or twice and see all that stuff. So the steering committee is established to help provide us some of that local knowledge that we need to successfully complete this project. So the steering committee will provide us advice on, maybe where our information and analysis is inaccurate, or guide us to look for certain things that are appropriate that maybe is not blatantly obvious to any of us. Hopefully you'll help us, publicize the events. You all have a network in the community. You can reach out to your friends, family, neighbors, and let them know that there are events and opportunities to provide input so that their voices can be heard. We're gonna be talking later in this meeting about stakeholders, but you'll help guide us to the right people to talk to, people in the community that maybe represent a larger group that maybe can provide us some more strategic input as well. So the steering committee is really important for our work. You are the people that guide us in the ultimate development of it. And then ultimately, as the town board has put forward in their resolution, you hold a public information meeting with the steering committee's help, end of this year, early next year. We'll take that input back and create a draft. And once the steering committee is happy with that draft and sends it on forward to the town board, then the steering committee's work is largely done. The town board will take it from there and adopt it, and go through that whole process. Does that make sense? Did I miss anything? You want to add anything?
No, I think that, the only distinction I want to make is that the members of the committee are 7 members. And there are 7 town staff members. Tim, Steve, myself, Dan Del Fiore when he is with us, and others that are listed on that sheet. We want this to be your plan, not our plan. And it's important that you understand what we are talking about. And if you have questions about it, don't wait to the end. Bring them up as they come along. I found that that's the only way to stay on course and stay within the time frame. I would like to publicly thank Susan for letting me twist her arm to not only help us with the survey of the residents on this issue, which she did an excellent job. It was well received by everybody. And I cannot begin to tell you how fortunate we are to have her kind of captaining the ship here, steering us through the course. Makes your job a lot easier, Eric and Matt. I can tell you right now. So, Eric, I'll let it go back to you. If any questions about what I just said from anybody? Julie, hi, how are you? Julie's husband's on another committee with me.
I thought my job was to make their job harder.
Anybody you want to run the show?
Oh, okay.
You're the captain.
Yeah, like wait till the last minute to raise my concerns and.
Is there anything that you want to add?
No,
Okay.
no,
Well, I have to give you every opportunity so you can, at the end, tell us how you never had a chance to speak.
no, I think it's really more up to the other committee members and, especially those, who use, we all use the parks differently, and I think that that's gonna be really key. It's just getting people's real and, insight on needs and concerns and things like that.
Well, we're starting to get more into that. Tonight is largely about kind of giving a background into the project and then leading into some of our next steps. So Ron mentioned the survey. You all should have a copy of it. We don't really need to go through everything right now. Please go through and digest it though at some point. There's a lot of great information here that we'll use in the project development. Who uses the facility, which ones are used, how often they use it, or kind of like which sports played or activities, all that stuff. So we can try to understand basically where maybe investment is needed. The survey is a great introduction to basically our first steps. It's also not usual that we get it, before the project has even begun. So there's still a lot to kind of dig through there, but it will give us a good guidance when we're doing some of the information analysis part of it. that we have an idea of where to look. That we have a lens that we can look through everything, so we kind of have a more narrow analysis to take than just kind of broadly speaking as far as like general guidelines. We have a good idea of kind of what the public is looking for, and we'll use that as we kind of get into the next part of the project, which is that information analysis. Does anybody have any questions on the survey? Do you want to add anything from what you found? For
I'm sticking to the keep
Yeah,
your mouth
that's
closed.
No, do you have any issues with that? Direct them to Ron.
All right. I also put in your packets, the action plan evaluation. The 2017 plan had a long list of action items for each park, for trails. Some of it was kind of more general. And I wanted to take a moment to kind of evaluate how much has been completed. If it hadn't been completed, if there was a reason. And Tim, I know that we shot this over to you the other day, and hopefully you can fill in some of the gaps for us.
Yeah,
but-
I will try to look through it
Yeah.
today. I didn't fill it out, get it back to you today, but
Appreciate it.
tonight would suffice.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily a problem
I
that
had to
things.
do a little research on some of it first, because it was before me.
That's no problem. It's gonna, again, become more valuable kind of later on. When we start talking about actions as part of this plan, we have to understand, are these still valuable? Is there a reason they weren't done? Maybe there was a good reason that they weren't actually accomplished, and we can kind of kick them out of the plan. Maybe the ones that were done, did it solve the issue? Is there something that we need to do further for some of those things? So, when we're going through and updating this plan, I hope that you'll keep this list near you so that we kind of know what was tried before, what was called out before, and maybe what still needs to be done, maybe where we need to go further. But there's a lot in here to look for, and I guess, did anybody look through this before this meeting? Actually, no, because I just gave you. Sorry. But is there any park, I guess, that you're particularly interested in? Pumpkin Hook, perhaps. I know some of them, like Beaver Creek, when the 2017 plan was created, Beaver Creek really only exists, I think, in partial form, and there was a master plan at that time. So a lot of this stuff was completed as part of that project development.
It's so nice, by the way.
Yeah. Matt, can you attest to that?
I have a question on the survey. Like, there was only 83% of them were Farmington residents. Is there any way to find out what the Farmington residents, how they voted in favor of the different things, instead of outsiders trying to?
Yeah. Susan, maybe you can answer that. I don't think,
Yeah, it's a good question. So what we did was for some of these questions, we pulled out just the Farmington residents and basically deleted all the non-Farmington residents. But not for every question. So the ones that, the special topics, Fountain, others, in this report. We also kind of in the background did the same thing and found that the percentages were all the same. So there was no difference for most of the questions if you took out non-Farmington residents. Where there was a difference was the Boughton Park, the recreation center, and the town land. There were slight differences.
You can put a difference on what's the Mountain Park and exercise.
Yeah, and I think, let's see. Yeah, so here, if you go to that page, it's towards the end. We filtered it for just Farmington residents. And the percentage of respondents who said they were supportive or somewhat supportive was 80%, which is like 2 or 3% different than if we included all the other.
80% of the survey says the Farmington residents.
No, 80% of the Farmington residents who answered the survey,
Oh, okay.
said they supported it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can go over it too. It's a great question. And we did some extra analysis because we had a lot of questions of like, why did you include people who were not? And partially is because we couldn't exclude people from answering it, so we figured we'll just ask them if they live here or not. And
Sure.
then we can just get rid of them.
Especially if we head out over social media and everyone's gonna see it and.
Right, right. And so, and you might, we got a lot of Victor people and Macedon, and
Mhm.
so.
Even though they're not taxpayers or live here, they still impact the demand for services in parks. They still, if they do come to these parks, they still take up parking spaces. They might still be a part of the youth programs and still come there, or if they're not part of the programs, they might still just show up and use the park facilities themselves. They represent demand that still has to be accounted for, whether they live here or not.
Yeah, my feeling, this is my personal feeling. If you don't live in this town, you shouldn't be telling us how to spend our money or what
Yeah.
to do with it. That's why I was curious, what Farmington residents. So, that's.
And that was why we made a really special point to filter out Farmington residents for those 3 questions. Because those are really, things that we would be paying for. I mean, we pay for all of it, but, we can, it seemed like a much more direct kind of thing, so. Great question, though.
Good question.
Thank you.
So. The action plan evaluation, like I said, Tim and us, we're gonna kind of sit down and make sure we have everything noted appropriately, what's complete, what's incomplete, what's in progress. There's a lot there. A lot of steps, a lot of that stuff deals with accessibility, which I know is probably important for the town. It must have been, they made it in the plan. So making sure that the parks is accessible to all residents. I imagine will be a big consideration for us moving forward. But as I mentioned, that's kind of leading or more into the background and getting us into what we're doing today. It's for you all to see what was talked about previously, and when you go to these parks in the coming weeks, you'll look at them and say, oh, we were supposed to do this, that was probably done as part of this plan. But we'll talk more about all these actions at a coming meeting when we kind of try to build out our own action plan as part of this project. Briefly talking about like the schedule of this project, or at least like how it will develop moving forward. Since we have the survey to work from, the way this has sort of been established as we're going to kind of get into the analysis early on. Some of that will be in some level of public engagement or engagement with stakeholders. We'll talk about that in a minute too. Let's talk with stakeholders. We'll do some early analysis to understand, what demographics are telling us, where people are moving, where development pressure is, maybe where there are good opportunities for future park spaces. As part of our working with the town, we'll be evaluating different, say, down the park, spaces for a potential community center, trying to understand what the feasibility of some of that stuff is. And that will be kind of an earlier part of this project. Again, meeting with stakeholders, doing some of that initial analysis, working with steering committee to give us some direction. From all that stuff, we'll then get into our own kind of goals, strategies, and actions. Giving us an idea somewhat of cost, but more so, broadly speaking, what this committee feels the vision and goals are for parks moving forward. Talk about that in a little bit more as far as the goals, but we have to have some kind of broad vision to tie everything into, or draw everything from, rather. So this committee will help us create those goals, break that down further into actionable strategies to accomplish those goals, And then we'll work into a public engagement session or public information session at the end of this year, early next year. So that was in the resolution as well, establishing the committee. And at that point, we'll then make revisions that the committee feels are necessary as a result of that public engagement. Create a draft, a complete draft. And then they approves it, send it along early next year to the town board to start the process of adoption. We'll create a more specific and outlined schedule to talk about at the next meeting. It will include at that point anyways, draft deliverable or when deliverables will be provided. And specifically, what months, periods of the months, all that good stuff. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next month, at least in greater detail. Does that rough outline that I laid out make sense to everybody? As far as the evolution of the project? The town board kind of set us on a relatively tight schedule as far as when all this stuff would come back. But I think it's certainly doable with everybody's help here. So I appreciate that. Just to take a second, Julie, are you all right? I know you don't have any questions, so we don't forget about you.
I have no question.
Okay, great. So with that in mind, if we can pull out the list of stakeholders and on the back side of it, there should be some questions, but so this next month in July, we'd like to start meeting with stakeholders. In the back, the questions are relatively introductory. They're just to get a rough idea and start the conversation. But we want to get an idea of basically who uses the parks, what they might foresee the need in the town of Farmington, where there's opportunities maybe to partner, especially with Ontario County and maybe surrounding municipalities. I know, we obviously had the survey with Victor, but if there's a way to share services and increase the level of service for residents, that may be a good option, depending on cost, obviously. So we put together this list of stakeholders, which again includes a lot of parks operators in kind of the Ontario County, Farmington area. My first question in the committee, that doesn't share, is basically who we're missing. Who else would you like to see on this list?
And just to chime in here too, a lot of these entities or organizations that are on the stakeholder list, we identified, as Eric said, just to make sure that there's overlap, shared services, etc. But also state level, regional, Genesee Finger Lakes, Genesee Transportation Council, New York Park Snowmobile Unit, because there are snowmobile trails throughout the county and the town, to ensure that any of the goals and objectives reflected in this plan ultimately are also reflective of state policy goals, regional planning goals as it pertains to parks and recreation, and align with the larger Genesee Transportation Council goals, etc. Because they have specific recommendations, I believe, or action items for potential parks, plannings, trails in the town of Farmington. So that's part of the lens through which we approach this list. But we do want to be as comprehensive as possible.
The one I would just say would be Macedon. I mean, obviously we've got our borders covered on Victor, Canandaigua, but there's a lot of overlap with the town of Macedon on the north side, especially right where I am, because there's Victor School right down the street that's all using Pumpkin Up Park, and they all do Farmington rec sports. So I know our neighbors use Macedon parks. So.
Okay, we'll definitely add those.
I wonder too about I don't know if they rise to the level of stakeholder or just general people but the kind of trails advocacy people. Like the trail and mountain bike
Yeah.
groups that
Yeah.
are big. I know they're big in Victor. I can't think
Chris,
of their
I
name right
can't
now.
think of the guy's name. who runs it, but
I
Chris
know.
knows who it is.
It's not Chauncey, but,
That's his main contact though.
oh,
Chauncey
okay.
is-
Chauncey's
yeah.
there. He does the
Is that the
Victor trail.
Roots one?
No,
No, I don't know. But I don't know. I know that when they hear about it, they'll make
Yeah.
some noise.
No, I think it's a good person to contact. I think, clearly, at least in the 2017 plan, trails were a big component of it. And, you all are users of the trail, so you can guide us in the same sense, but understanding, from people that use trails heavily, maybe what parts of it are missing
Right.
that can improve the experience. Provide more opportunities.
The other one I was wondering was about like seniors. And I do remember quite a few comments from people in the survey, like asking for more services for seniors, like transportation or programming. And I don't know if there's a senior,
Maybe the Office of Aging would be a good first contact. And
yeah, like we don't have a senior center in Farmington.
No, they just meet at the Retensia Lodge, but they're a very active
Oh,
group.
okay.
They meet like once a month, I think. My
Oh.
in-laws are very involved with it.
Okay, maybe you.
So
could
there
put
is a,
this out.
there is a town level senior group.
Mhm.
All right, because that was definitely a blind spot of this list, admittedly, when we were working to put it together. Had preliminary discussions with Ron and Supervisor Inglesby and talked about, the need for programming, certainly senior programming, and then when we were making this list, yeah, it was a little difficult to pin down who, like if there's an entity or a group that was representative of seniors that would be great to contact. So that's fantastic information.
I didn't-
Any other thoughts on who's missing?
safe to assume that the school districts then talk to the athletic department.
I guess that was our assumption, but we can more specifically reach out to the athletic directors.
Yeah, we can do both. It could be, and that's actually probably a worthwhile discussion now, is like, if we say school districts, do we mean school board? Do we mean school administration? Do we mean athletic departments? Do we mean all of the above?
I definitely think you should include athletic departments.
Mhm.
They do use our field. In the past, they had an issue with baseball and we did, they used our fields for games. And the Victor Athletic Director lives in the town.
Well, I think it's certainly appropriate to include, the athletic directors, being how closely aligned they are with what this plan is. That said, since they're employed by the school board, we might as well include them as well.
Sure.
They feel like commenting at that point, they can.
Mhm.
Certainly useful to have them on board.
I don't know if you want to include sports organizations. Pretty sure the baseball are gonna say more baseball field and soccer, they're gonna say more soccer fields,
Right.
but they're some of the biggest users of the parks for sure.
I think that that's a good idea. I do appreciate the point you're making. I think that that's probably accurate. But again, to the extent that they might be able to provide specific recommendations, that, if they use the parks at town hall, right, and they say there is no shade whatsoever for parents that are there watching games, that's great
You bring your own.
information for us, yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So. You can't expect the town to provide that.
Well,
Yeah.
trees or something like that, but so yes, I think it'd be good to reach out to them, understand that they have their bias, but trying to parse out some useful information there. Do you have, there's probably a million of them, so I don't want to line them all up right now, but if you all could think of any organizations or sports leagues that you're aware of, and just shoot us any contact information you have or the name of them, and we can start.
Really probably.
So we have a process for, the organizations using our field. So we have all that contact information and I can gather that and provide it.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
There are no garden groups or landscaping organizations. Does Farmington have a gardening group? Or any kind of?
So I
affiliation?
know, I heard bluebells mentioned.
Hmm.
And the Canandaigua Botanical Club, they actually come out and pull some of those invasive flowers that could take over the bluebells to help save the bluebells.
Yeah,
Maybe I can get you their information.
or cooperative extension has a master gardeners program. I don't know if we have a forestry program in our county, but some cooperative extensions do. Master of Forestry.
See what we can find there. Is there any other ideas as far as like the people to reach out to? Those are all really great suggestions. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts. We provided a list of questions. And again, very general stuff. We really want to kind of just open the conversation. It's going to be different depending on who we are reaching out to or speaking to at that particular instant. I guess, with regard to the questions, I just want to make sure that we have a good idea of the information that you all want as the steering committee to capture when we're speaking to them. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we ask that you feel like would be valuable when it comes to creating the plan?
No, I think it's a good list, yeah.
And we'll, like I said, when we get into the conversation with them this month sometime, there will be more to come out of it, but those are kind of the introductions to it.
Going back to one of the there's a couple of agencies that come to my mind that we should touch base with. One is the State Office of Parks and Recreation. And it's a regional office down in Schumansburg, which is not right next door to Farmington, so there's a little distance there, but just reaching out to them and finding out who their liaison person is, I found over the years is very helpful when it comes time for seeking grant opportunities. One of the other agencies that I have been trying to get to do more countywide planning, and that is Ontario County Plan. When we were working on the Auburn Trail project, Tom Harvey was here in the room saying how he thought it would be a good idea to have Ontario County pull together a countywide trails program. So that there was an opportunity there to see where all of these resources were and how they could be tied together and not separate. So someone from county planning would be a great person to reach out to and get information on.
And how much have they been in touch with you with regard to their county park and recreation plan?
They
They've
sent
sent like
they sent us a draft copy, and that's first I knew that they were doing something.
Did they do a trails plan?
Not a trails plan,
No,
it's
oh,
a park plan. Analysis of the existing county parks, jump off the different ones that they have here in the county.
we'll reach out to Tom and who's the other gentleman?
Tim Jensen,
Is Tim still around? I don't know, but we'll reach out to Tom certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Tim's
Thomas
still
Lyon, I think
there.
is the other one.
Or if anybody's married to a county planner, that would be a good resource.
Guilty.
All right, but yeah, I mean, having the county on board, like we said, that parks facilities aren't exclusive to a large degree. Everybody throughout the county uses them, so it makes sense that the county be involved and supportive. If we could all pull out the last thing that I provided here, so the last sheet here. Park and recreation goals and objectives. So the resolution creating a committee, which gives us our charge. And just general planning practice. We should, look to past plans to partly help guide us. Certainly the comprehensive plan, which this plan should try to further. And then in updating the 2017 plan, I wanted to take a look at the goals. I also included in the Roman numerals, those are like the objectives, which we don't necessarily have to touch on today, but I did provide them just for your information. But I wanted to touch on the goals that were provided in that master plan, 2017, and really just get your thoughts on them. As we work through our inventory and analysis, looking at the existing conditions, it's very helpful to us have some idea of, broadly what kind of the vision the committee might be looking for, so that we know to focus our attention in evaluation to those things. So if you want programs for seniors, we can put more attention into programs for seniors or recreation, all that good stuff. But understanding that, unfortunately, our plan can only be so direct, have so much analysis in it, so we want to make sure that it's focused appropriately. So with that in mind, I wanted to put these goals before you and get your thoughts on them to see, what's there, what's good, what's missing, how they might change in this plan that we're working on, so that we can go into the next step, the evaluation, more accurately and more effectively. And so we'll kind of go through these just one by one here. The 2021 comprehensive plan, broadly, for anybody that's not aware, there's like different sections of it. The parks falls under public utilities, facilities and services. Broadly for that service category, the goal was to provide public utilities, facilities and services that efficiently meet present needs and anticipate future needs of residents in accordance with the goals and objectives of this plan. For parks and recreation specifically was to provide accessible and attractive parks and diverse recreational opportunities. We don't necessarily need to comment on that one because it's a comprehensive plan. It kind of guides us here. We're not going to change that comprehensive plan. But we can build upon that goal and that comprehensive plan and provide some greater direction. Does anybody have any kind of thoughts about that goal? Do you feel like it's overly broad? Where can we clean it up a little bit? Where can we put more into that goal to flesh it out a bit more? When we're more specifically dealing with a master plan that we have the space to do. So just looking at that, accessible, big part of it, right? So it's not just, we're talking about access. Oftentimes it is, for seniors, people with disabilities, but it also can include mothers in strollers, young children generally. It also can mean that there's disconnections. Let's say if there's no sidewalk access or something like that, if you don't have a vehicle, you wouldn't then have access to a park. So, maybe a goal in this plan is to more clearly lay out what accessible means when we're talking about it in this plan. Attractive, attractive parks, you know, what does that look like, I guess? Are there different contexts that some things might be attractive? If you have maybe like a neighborhood pocket park, which I don't recall there being many kind of like small pocket parks in town, is that right?
Not at the present time, there isn't.
You have two, but they're private through the HOA. They're not town parks. It wouldn't really
Right.
work.
Not necessarily something we're not planning for.
Right,
HOA
I'm just saying,
parks,
like, that's
but-
any of the only two that I know of in the
Right, yeah.
town.
But it is something anyways for us to consider if we feel like those are facilities that should be public.
Mhm.
Maybe that's something we, not necessarily taking those ones, but for future planning efforts. And then as far as, diverse recreational opportunities, we should probably more clearly spell out what that means. Town's resources are scarce. So we have to provide some level of direction to the town, as far as like what we see the priorities. Does that all kind of make sense? And that's just drawn from the one goal statement from the comprehensive plan, just some ideas maybe that we can elaborate on when we work on our own goals as part of this master planning effort. With that in mind, getting into the 2017 goals, as I read through these, I want you to kind of think about partly the parks, recreation facilities, trails that you use to see if there's, I guess, whether it meets these goals, whether it meets those standards that have kind of been set from the plan, and maybe it does. But I guess, how we can improve these goal statements, whether there's still, something that the town should aspire to, or, maybe if there's some additional clarity that can be brought to them. Whether it's just an additional phrase, different language uses, or just striking that out and rewriting it entirely. And I really want you all to be open, be creative. Feel free to thrash that 2017 plan and do something new, but so we're just using it as a starting point anyways. So the first goal that it laid out was to promote the creation of a diversity of active and passive recreation facilities within the town for all age groups. You think that the town does that or has accomplished that goal, or is that something that the town should still try for? Are all age groups appropriately provided with facilities, active and passive?
I don't know.
I mean, they do events that include for all ages, but it's just like it's not something that's all year. Other than like playgrounds, but at a certain age that's done. They just have like the certain events throughout the year. But they're more and more they're doing.
Are there? So you said it's sort of throughout the year, but stops. Is it winter time, I assume?
Like holidays, they do events and they do the rec in the summer. And they do stuff like at 4th of July, they try to do stuff for the kids.
Right.
So I would say for children, we have events pretty quarterly. We also have senior citizen events several times a year. The seniors can participate. We also provide a meeting place for their group to meet. So I think we do pretty good, hitting all ranges. When you include trails, parks, all our courts are pickleball lined also. So I think we do a pretty good job of trying to hit, our young to our seniors.
The only age group I think many places are missing, not just us, is like the teen group. There's not a great, safe, productive place for teens. And I don't know what that is, or.
Okay. That was gonna be my next question. What does that look like?
I mean, I don't know if it's like big space with video games and board games and card games and bookshelves, and so you can kind of, because you're never gonna please everybody, right? And everybody has a different, you know, what they want to get out of a place like that is gonna be different, right? So if you've got a kid who loves gaming, you're not necessarily gonna go buy Xboxes and a whole bunch of video games, but if you could get some old school arcade games, that would be kind of fun. Who manages that and runs that, because you need someone obviously overseeing it, that's a whole other thing. But I think to have like a safe place to draw kids in, that's the other thing, is how you draw them there. If you're gonna create the space and spend the time, money, and effort, you've got to want them to come. So that's my only, I think, the teen section.
That's a really good point. I also think it provides a great look at, what we have this image of what park and recreation looks like. But gaming is recreation. It's
Right.
also huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of colleges now that have,
Yeah.
esports teams.
Mhm.
It doesn't fit like the standard mold of what park and recreation looks like, but
Right.
it is.
Yeah, it's
a
all
lot
form of
more-
recreation.
Right, but it could be as easy as like even cornhole or, what's the frisbee one?
Game jam.
Yes, thank you. You know, stuff like that. So it's not necessarily related to electronics, but it's a place where they can do those things, where you could set up a league for kids, right? You could do all those events.
Some of them are not just hanging out at the park at dusk, and they're doing stuff.
Right.
I mean, our basketball courts are pretty busy with a lot of kind of teenage kids playing in the evenings, at least Mortensia is. So, so I do see that. We do have teens that attend rec also, and actually we employ a lot of teens that work as CITs and park leaders, throughout the 6-week rec program.
Julie, what's
Um,
the age limit or the age for hiring for that?
I
You know?
believe we go as young as 15.
Okay.
No, we do prefer to, when we look at our candidates, we do like, a little older candidate, but
Sure.
I believe we do have some 15.
Okay.
So although it is a job, they are, participating in recreation activities, games, nature walks, activities, things like that.
When you talk about these activities like for kids and that, are you talking for something during the summer months, or are you talking year round?
I would say year round.
You're looking for a building that,
Yeah, potentially, you want to provide a diverse recreation opportunity for at least most of the public, which again offers a huge range of things. Having flexible spaces, like basically a big building allows, is a great opportunity to let them program it however they see fit, as long as you have space to do it. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that between maintenance and operations. But, I think our charge, as Peter alluded to, is not necessarily to worry about the cost. But rather to focus on the vision and prioritizing. And then let them kind of worry about how to pay for things. Right?
Yeah, that's what he said. Don't worry about the money.
Were these,
He said, "Don't worry about
yeah, don't worry about it.
Yes, exactly.
Were these
That's
goals?
his job.
I don't know how that works when you get into budget.
Well, they'll think about it certainly, we'll provide them a draft and they'll work it before it ultimately gets adopted, but, I think that's good advice, certainly. They are the fiscal officers of the town.
Are you looking to rewrite these goals from the 2017? And are these in order of or were they intended to be priorities? Like one is like.
No, that was just the arrangement they were on the
Oh,
plan.
okay.
As far as whether I intend to rewrite them, I think that it's open to the committee, whether the committee feels like they would like to rewrite them. And this plan is an update that you all are providing steering and guidance on. I don't think that you should feel tethered to goals that are no longer representative of the community. Of course, goals are oftentimes broad enough to usually be applicable in some sense.
Well, it depends on your grant writing skill ability to, well, this is what it means. And that's key. I guess if I can just jump in here, my desires is to create a document that helps the public understand priorities. Okay, we can't do everything and it can't be done overnight. But there are priorities that need to be done. Those priorities are influenced greatly by state and federal grant programs. One of the things that I have learned over time is that planning is not done overnight. It has to be well thought out and persevered. And it has to be flexible enough. And that's why some of the language that you have in these documents are so broad and overreaching. When we were successful here with getting the trail grant, we were able to show how it related to the regional trail system that the Genesee Finger Lakes and GTC had created. It was visionary, something that came out of a survey of town residents. And I know that the town board was somewhat skeptical at the time about spending money to, design and further come up with the trail configuration that we have there now. It's interesting that we also have had success with pedestrian bicycle trail connections. What we're working on now is just the tip of the iceberg. I know Tim is down there. Come on, I got enough. But there are other things that we will be looking at in this exercise. I don't mean to steal the stage here, so if I'm overstepping, holler at me. For example, one of the problems that we have here with accessibility to our parks is up until recently, everything was dependent on the automobile. Okay, you didn't have pedestrian access or bicycle trails or but that's changing. Okay, and we have identified the first phase. We need to focus on the second phase now of this. We're working with trying to get developers to realize that there's a commitment that they are obligated to make to the town when proposing development. Right now, we have a project that is pending before the town board that would bring considerable amount of sidewalks along 332, which is a major highway corridor. That sidewalk that we had there was kind of a fluke. It was something that, Canandaigua was going to have sidewalks. Well, hey, we ought to have sidewalks. Well, we got them, and they became popular. And they've continued to be popular. And now we've got a system where we've got developers coming before us that will be putting in more and more sidewalk connections so that people who maybe aren't as fortunate as others can walk to the parks, can ride to the parks, and we have a safe system for them to do that. And that was important to the state and important to the law enforcement agencies and the various ambulance corps that serve the area. You know, that's kind of what I would like to see come out of this, the opportunity to go after that state money instead of having it all moved to other parts of the state or the region. Justify priorities here again in Farmington. We've been somewhat successful. We did get some park money, but that's one of the things that we hope to come out of this with is a sense of direction as to where we can go for funding some of these improvements that we're talking about. They can't all come out of Larry Potter's pocket. He's not gonna let that happen. So my 2 cents is that, you know, this is more than just saying we ought to have more recreational programs. Everybody would like that, but how do you pay for them? That's the big question. And is there any economies of scale with looking to join with other municipalities nearby? There's been a lot of discussion about that.
Right, or how can we leverage our plan with what's sort of hot right now and getting funded? you
Yeah,
know, and
exactly.
Kind of, like you said, write our plan in a way that it looks like whatever they're funding.
That's
To
it.
get what we want, right? Isn't that the game?
That is the game, and you really have to play the game because it gets very competitive.
Like safe streets, trail connections, non-motorized, all that kind of stuff is big right now, right? And I think that
Yeah,
you're speaking that language. Plus, I think the teens are people who also may not be able to drive to parks, right? So that is like really important. You know, there could be a great facility somewhere, but if everybody has to get a ride there, that's
Right.
tough.
that you gotta find a place to park them when they do get there, you know. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I want to just throw out on the table, and that is that we have had a number of park improvements over the years. And they've all been, with the exception of Hortensia and Beaver Creek, long established park facilities. As we continue to grow, the demands for additional park facilities is something that we need to look at. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want, however you want to say it, we can't move those investments into some of the more rural or areas of the community because of the impact that it has on getting people there and back. So we're kind of trying to fit them in within the developing community center area that we have, and how do we accomplish that? One of the things that I'd like to see removed from the Parks and Rec plan is there was at one time a thought that building trails along established creeks would be a smart thing to do. And we've had some projects along Beaver Creek, for example, that county has harped on us saying, you know, well, it's in your land. You want to see a trail here. But there was no connectivity thought out of where that trail would connect to. And it's things like that that we want to fine tune, I think, to remove that nemesis that keeps haunting us from time to time.
So with regard to like the trails along streams. You just want more kind of like specific direction on what that looks like in a way that it connects to larger trail systems or not just like a small segment?
Well, the idea of having a walking path along a creek was something that at one time was thought to be a wise thing to go for. And then we discovered that you get into all kinds of easement issues. Property owners' rights, people are opposed to that, and God forbid, trying to maintain something down there during different periods of time.
I could see that being like a safety issue too, with being on the fire department and you getting calls down there and having to. If we
Exactly.
can't take our UTV down some of the trails because they're blocked, and if you go down the water, it's even harder.
Right. So, those are, I'm just throwing things out, ideas for you to think about. Yeah, it would be great if we could have a trail town like Farmington has, where you have trails, but that's taken 35, 40 years to develop. I remember when they started it. Aging myself now. Shut up.
I also wonder, if there's a plan to include more people from the town in a public engagement program. I think it would be really important to communicate, what can we do in 5 years really, or what's kind of realistic to expect out of the next 5 years. And yes, we can put things in the plan that we want and do things to work towards them, but can't put like 10 projects in as like, we're gonna do this in the next 5 years. And, if we're gonna be seeking input on what the priority should be, I think that needs to be really clearly communicated that, and I don't know, you guys know better than me, like what's realistic to say, yeah, we're gonna go after grant funding for, 2-3 things in the next 5 years. Or maybe there are other things you can do to start moving other initiatives forward, but you know what I mean? Like, that's a tough thing to communicate, but interesting to know what the community thinks is the priority.
Because I think sometimes seeing these surveys, these people, they want this stuff, but is it feasible to? It's gonna take a while to get some of this stuff and getting the money for it.
It's true.
Great, it's a long list of things that we offered.
Yeah, I.
We just thought we'd set expectations really high.
And you accomplished that.
Well, being that, yes, this will be updated probably another 5 to 10 years. And the ones that we set out to accomplish in that time, yes, but understanding, like you want to accomplish those, but understanding that. It takes 35 years to do a large plan, and the vision for this plan can be that long, but we're not gonna accomplish that whole thing. We're gonna move in that direction. It has to start moving that way. So we set the direction, we take some initial steps. There's larger ones that are prioritized, the ones that kind of have to be done first, or maybe where the funding is available to be done first, which can be the priority items. But yeah, to your point, we're not gonna can't do everything. Sadly.
Yeah, for example, we have a railroad here that goes through town. And in parts of the county, it's very active. Other parts of the county, the iron in the rails are worth more than maintaining the railroad. To be very blunt. But we don't want to lose that opportunity if that becomes reality where the rail service ceases to exist. for more passive recreation purposes. GTC has already identified the railroad corridor for an additional regional trail connection to the Ontario pathways, the Finger Lakes trails and stuff. So we're in a very key area. Did you realize you could get on your bike over there in Auburn Meadows and end up in Allegheny State Park?
No.
Well, you can, but you can't get to Canandaigua. Okay,
You could, but it'd be dangerous.
Yeah,
so, you know, there's the, you know,
yeah.
the old philosopher. I keep interrupting you.
No,
And
it's all very good context. It's thought provoking. It's what I want, you know, the committee to do is think about these things, ask questions. Provide any additional comments.
we have another newsletter that we're working on a deadline for coming up early July to reach out to the residents, the community, and to provide them information as to what direction we're going, where we're going, how we get there. And maybe that's something, Susan, that we could put our heads together and come up with some thought-provoking opportunities to the efforts here that are underway. It was July 10th, the deadline I have.
Yeah.
It's the 10th.
Yeah.
And not the least of which, you know, it's great to have all these park facilities, but it takes a lot of energy to maintain them. And it means people, that means equipment, that means time. And that means a lot of headaches for our parks and highway superintendent. They have to confront each year with the town board. So it's all related. There's an effort underway with Cobblestone Performing Arts Center to create a community wellness center, a center for various individuals, whether they're challenged in one way or another, or whether it's socialization. That seems to be going the private route. And there's always been that long-standing interest of shared community services. And meanwhile, the border between the two municipalities is slowly disappearing and shrinking in availability of sites where it would be convenient. And someday somebody's going to say, well, why didn't we move on this, 20 years ago when we knew this is where we wanted to go? These are all thought-provoking ideas that we kind of need to think about a little bit more than once every 10 years.
When you mentioned like the railroad bed for trails and that, you'd have to get a hold of the county or whoever owns it if they ever decide to do something before individuals buy up sections of it.
It's exactly the point, okay? There's a beautiful corridor between Canandaigua, Bloomfield, and Honeyway Falls that it's carved up now, never is going to happen. Okay, it would be a nightmare trying to negotiate with all those property owners.
It's been removed entirely, and then it's back to like farmland or whatever. Or peanut line? Yeah, the peanut line, some of
Yeah.
it's just completely gone. It's like farmland now too. You couldn't even tell it was railroad.
Town of Canandaigua has a small section over there off from, what is it? No, it's Hickox or Cooley, one of the two.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I drive by and I see it, but I don't know where it goes and how far it goes.
That's why we have to have a good plan, give the town board direction for how to prioritize their resources, whether it's funding or just efforts in general. And attention. So, as part of this plan, right, we're gonna help do that, should the town board focus on trails or, gaming or community center, or whatever, they can probably do both. It's good to give them multiple options in case the grant funding doesn't come through or whatever for one, but it doesn't the other. So we get to evaluate all that. Any other thoughts? I do want to just finish up on this little list here.
I just had one thing that
Please.
doesn't have to go in here, or we can talk about another time, but I think something a couple of you said was, what if there was something in here that looked or focused on public health as a goal? And that could be, physical and mental health, and that can tie in a lot of other partnerships or funding or, and that's a hot thing right now.
Sure is. Well, U of R just opened, it's the first mental health wellness center for like young adults, I guess.
The walk-in clinic.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Through Balisano. So, I mean, it's nice to have.
Nice to be friends with Tom though, so.
I think that's a really good topic, a role that parks play that's pretty underappreciated. So maybe we can think about adding a goal that's just relates to,
Weave it in there somehow.
we'll figure out a place for it, at least for our purposes right now. We'll keep that in mind. When we start like the drafting process, we'll talk about adding that in, and we'll look at it more from like our analysis component. How, just generally best practice wise, and research wise, how parks influence public health. Certainly they have a large role in mental health. And then, how the town of Farmington specifically maybe stacks up, how they can improve. With the second goal here, capitalizing unique scenic, historical and cultural assets, and scenic means for recreational and educational pursuits. I guess I'm curious your thoughts, what opportunities the town is missing with regard to that goal? Are there cultural areas, facilities that aren't taken advantage of to the degree that you all would like, or same with scenic, or I'm guessing this also means kind of like environmental features, wetlands, maybe there's a lot of bird habitat or something like that. Are there opportunities in the town of Farmington to do these things that are being missed, or that the town is doing well? I think Martensia Park is a really great park environmental land. Plus the trail, it's kind of got everything you want.
We can always bring in the town historian for that kind of stuff too, because she's very active with the town and always posting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're, if the goal remains to be educational,
Mhm.
maybe help provide us some good material, but also how she would like to convey that stuff will be best. The next goal, just moving on, stop me if there's anything that you want to add. Provide high quality recreational lands, facilities and programs in a fiscally appropriate manner. This is kind of similar. There's certainly some overlap with the first goal. Maybe we can kind of parse them out a little bit more so they don't overlap as much, but specifically it's talking about high quality and fiscally appropriate. So yeah, I think that's something that we should strive to do. You have to do, your resources are always gonna be constrained by finances. It's more of a foundational element of the plan than it is kind of a goal in itself.
You can come up with all these ideas, but if there's no way to pay for it or get help for it, it's not gonna go anywhere.
As Ron has been saying, it's a critical component of this plan to make sure that whatever we put in there can actually be accomplished. And the funding to. Fourth goal, ensure that parks and recreational offerings are responsive to the needs and desires of the community. So I think that this is a really good goal as far as what it promotes the objectives that stem from that. The organizational capacity to make sure that it's continually meeting the needs of the community, updating the plan, having the Recreation Advisory Board, all that stuff are great ongoing items for the town to kind of look to make sure that the parks program or recreation programs are good and solid in the long term. That's all of them, the goals from the 2017 plan. So we talked about adding public health as a goal for the parks and recreation plan programs moving forward.
Or maybe just weaving it in here somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
I would leave it to you guys to advise us on how to organize these.
Yeah.
If they need, if that warrants any kind of reorganization or.
Okay.
I mean, I think, Ron, your point of people being able to understand what the priorities are. I don't know, can the goals help do that? Where it's like, I read this and I'm kind of like, I don't really know if I read this exactly where we're going, and I don't know if you're supposed to be able to read the goals and say like, oh yeah, now I know what my town is once,
I guess
but-
when you brought up public health, you might not necessarily understand what's in there, but you might get a feeling of what's left out. You have priorities that you think are, should be specifically mentioned. They're very important to you. But when they don't call out to you in those goals, that you get the feeling that they're not being prioritized enough. That said, it's difficult to emphasize everything in goals just because of how broad they have to be. But we'll work on it. We'll play with that a little bit. When we're doing our analysis, we'll try to keep that in mind to see kind of like what's missing. One of the things that jumps out to me is when we're talking about accessibility, you mentioned earlier, like transportation, it doesn't really, or connectivity to the parks, doesn't really come out in these goals too much. It might make an appearance in some of the objectives, but when people use the park, they have to be able to get there, right? And we're talking about teenagers. They're, at least a good portion of them, are a group that don't have access to cars.
Mhm.
We oftentimes look at households without access to cars, but teenagers represent a large population that, by their age and ability, legality, don't have access to a vehicle. So providing, alternative and safe transportation options, for them to get to parks is important for them to use them.
Yeah.
Or else you're tethered to your parents. And teenagers don't like to be tethered to their parents.
Very true.
So kind of getting into the connectivity component, connecting people to the parks that serve them. That will, I know, be a part of our analysis. And maybe it makes its way into a goal. That's all I had as far as agenda items. The remaining, we had public comment, but there's nobody on and nobody's joined us. What else, from the committee? Is there anything that we're missing that you want us to look at, that you want us to be aware of? This is just a section for you all to give us any guidance on stuff that's not on the agenda so that we're getting everything that you want us to. And you're the committee, you get to steer us. What are we missing?
Good start.
Yeah, a lot of information.
Yeah, it's a lot, yeah. Yeah.
Good information.
Great. I mean, yeah, these goals are very comprehensive and objectives. There's a lot in here, so
Yeah.
great. It's a lot to work with.
It didn't seem like the 2017 plan was short on stuff to work on.
Right.
There was a lot of action items for 5 to 10 years. Same with the objectives and stuff. So, maybe that's something to look at when we're doing this one again, trying to narrow it into feasibility and also just so you're not spread too thin, but focus on funding and. Matt, do you have anything else? Anything I'm missing?
No, just that, I've been, dutifully and silently taking notes. But I appreciate the discussion, the thoughtful discussion. I think Eric and I are really well set up to kind of hit the ground running again in preparation for August meeting. So I just, want to thank all of you for, not only donating your time, but also for the very thoughtful analysis and comments this evening.
Is the existing plan, if committee members wanted to read that, is that on the website?
What?
The existing Parks Master Plan? You might have already told us this.
I believe it is.
Oh, okay.
My understanding it is.
It is, and I can circulate a copy too for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Study up, committee.
Yeah.
I know we talked previously about like the town hosting like a spot on the website for this update specifically in the process.
Sure.
Is that we can do that?
I still can do that.
So leading into the next meeting, we'll hopefully have some feedback from stakeholders. Maybe not all of them, really depends on how we can schedule everybody in, their availability. But we hope to have some initial feedback from stakeholders. We'll try to have I plan to have some kind of initial conditions and analysis. And then we'll go over some of that fun stuff in the next meeting. Work that into, again, where evaluation of goals and what the town's direction needs to be.
Great.
I'll just mention our largest recreation event is on Wednesday night, the fireworks
Oh,
here
yeah.
at Town Hall, so. If you're coming, come early because we had to close the parking lot last year because we ran out of places to put cars.
Oversubscribed. If somebody would be kind enough to take a couple of pictures that evening, that would be great for the plan.
Yes.
Just spinning around, people that have these.
I'm trying to dodge cars, but I can't take. that.
Yeah, and that was actually a great suggestion by Ron. If any of you in just your day to day, I know we talked about how we all use the facilities in the town, want to just snap some pictures. I've been to every park in the town to take some pictures, but they're just kind of just pictures of either an empty playground or you'll notice like the same little 3-year-old girl hanging from the monkey bars in the background of everything. So it would be nice to get anything, like if you're just running and you want to snap a picture of the Auburn Trail, or if you're just walking, just on a sidewalk or any parks that you use regularly. I know doing these plans before, sometimes like when it comes to the end of it, they're very lacking in like good photos, good graphics, good pictures that show the parks really in a representative way. So I would encourage everybody to just get out there and snap some photos. But yeah, events, certainly. Those are great.
Thank you, Matt.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You've ever, put together a plan before, that having good visuals is helpful, making the plan attractive and readable. Having people in the photos gives us some more attractive shots than just grass, maybe kind of struggling to find the context.
Susan's pie charts, they snap 10,000 words all in a circle. Great job.
It is hard with no pictures. I would agree. Yeah, we should all, go out and take a couple photos and.
And I'll try to set up just a cloud folder essentially. That we'll put all the materials in for this meeting, future meetings, and if you want to drop photos in there and draw it into the cloud as well, so we can more easily share documents to everybody. If you lose an email, go to the cloud folder and find it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And if you dig through this, you have any other questions, comments, shoot me an email, food round. So that, and Susan, as chair, so that we're all tied in together and we can try to address any concerns that you have.
Thanks, yeah, excited.
Thank you, everybody.
I gotta go out and see the park that I haven't been to. And me too, maybe. Ever.
I have to share a story with you about parks. We have this gentleman that comes to the park quite often, most days, and he brings his Springer Spaniel Retriever dog. And he hits golf balls. And that dog goes and gets the golf balls.
I need a
and
dog
brings
like
them
that.
back, and he hits the golf balls.
That's genius.
It's incredible watching how they have the whole field to themselves in the morning.
Sure.
And it's just, a great picture. If I get a chance, I'll take a shot of how, people talk about a dog park. We got one.
Impressive, the dog follow the golf ball, right?
Never lose a golf ball. That's great.
Yeah, they are.
Friday, like with the fire department, we try to get people out, like, we were in, fire prevention, we try to do like the fire trucks at the parks and stuff, but it's hard to like, only do so many like half a day, then switch and don't always have people coming out.
Yeah. I'll bring this up.
I
Really
mean,
cool.
social media is good, but it doesn't reach everybody or
Yeah,
doesn't get approved and seen.
I mean, I know that my son would love to be in the park whenever there's fire department there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a draw. You're always looking for stuff to keep your kids entertained. That's
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Good night. Well, thank you, Susan.
Oh,
I appreciate that.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah.
Good, how are you doing?
Figured it's a plan for you.
Oh.
I can't help when there's something I do. I put together too many books.
We just spent on rubber mulch for the.
Yeah,
I know.
August is better than
What was it?
July for us.
40?
Yeah, same thing. Fertilize.
Oh, 60,000?
Yeah.
Rubber mulch, yeah.
Instead of putting CIS guy
Their floor. Two playgrounds, a pumpkin hook.
There's-
It's like it's internal loss, so.
These aren't even like,
Do you guys have that, like, is it Matt Horster?
like Canandaigua. No.
Matt. Lance is boss, Lance is my boss,
The budget, I understand, well, 6%
planning board,
to cover the
services.
dam,
Oh.
trails and everything.
They're big focus areas.
That's why we're involved in that.
Thing or-
Yeah, 'cause most of that falls on Dick.
It is a road.
Yeah, it's our